everyone, thanks for tuning in to the CATA Secondary School Podcast. I'm your host, CJ Rosenborough, and in today's episode, we're discussing youth sports specialization, as this has become an increasingly common topic of conversation with athletes and families over the years. We're excited to have Katie and Ashley joining us this morning to share their insights and experiences. But before we jump into the conversation, let's quickly break down what we'll be covering in today's episode. So we'll be going over specialization in youth sports. Those of you who are in the Denver metro area or were able to commute to the Denver metro area back in July, I think end of July, CATA had their summit symposium alongside CHASA's summit for the preseason. And there were a couple talkers on youth sports specialization. And me personally, it kind of hit home. I thought it was really interesting. Thought it was really cool. So it's something that we're seeing more and more often. So we want to chat about it. So first section, we're going to talk about what is sports specialization, how do we define it, and why do families do it? And then we're going to talk about the risk of adolescent athletes specializing. And then we're going to wrap it up with how to frame that discussion to the families, because this is something where it's not usually going to be an easy discussion with these families. They're usually the ones who are trying to get their kids to go pro, go Olympic, whatever. So it's a bit of a difficult conversation to have. So starting off, I know we've all kind of looked into this a little bit. Can anybody give me a good definition for what sports specialization is?
An athlete trains year-round in a single sport, specifically more than 8 months a year.
As Katie's frantically trying to click to it.
No, I have it in one of the papers highlighted, the actual definition. The concept of participating in year-round intensive training within a single sport or physical activity at the exclusion of others.
Good. And so that definition can be found a couple different sources. It's pretty widely used. We found it from Johns Hopkins Medicine, the NATA consensus statement on youth sports specialization, which, if I remember correctly, there's going to be position statements coming out on this, which is super exciting.
I just read it from the NSCA's position statement as well.
That as well. And then a couple different research articles use that definition as well. So it's pretty robust, pretty commonly used. A couple factors of it is quitting other sports to focus on one sport. And to me, that's one of the bigger ones, because you can play one sport and train, but once you start quitting other sports to focus on one sport, that's kind of like, it's almost like the gateway drug. Like that's typically the first step of, oh, I'm not going to play volleyball this year because I want to focus on soccer. And then all of a sudden they're playing soccer year round 2 years later. And you're like, oh, you used to be a 2-3 sport athlete. And now it started off with quitting volleyball because you didn't want to get injured. And now you're just playing soccer year round. So I feel like that's kind of the first step that I see a lot of kids taking. What sports do you guys see this happening the most in?
Softball, baseball, soccer, gymnastics.
All of them?
All of them.
Yoga's the only one that I don't, well, there's football and wrestling. Football and wrestling don't seem to specialize.
Because
No,
they
they
just,
don't.
yeah, they're club sports.
Because you know why? Because their professional programs say, you know what makes you better at football? All these other things.
I think there's also a lack of club for football. You can't really play.
Right.
You play 7-on-7s.
It's the only sport where you play once a week and you can only play so many times because your body will break down. Turns out the NFL also talks about it every Sunday. Hey, this athlete, he also played these 3 sports when he was in high school. This athlete, he played these ones. It's the only one where they actively promote it.
That's such a good point. And that's something we'll talk about in the last section of how to frame that to families. But yeah, how many times do you hear the 5-star recruits in college football and NFL? They're like, oh yeah, he was state champion triple jump. He did this. He was a wrestler, so he knows leverage. Like they actively promote that. So I feel like you don't see that as much and a lot of it's wrestling and football. They kind of go hand in hand, and track, but who wants to specialize in track? I'm sorry, running stinks.
It's the thing now. No, there's club track teams that have them practicing year round now.
Really?
That's the thing. Yeah, you'll see them at our high schools. All the high schools that I've been at, they have track club. Our track team right now has club coaches coaching them for indoor track right now. And high schools still participate in indoor track, but there is clubs that are doing club track right now.
Oh, I guess it is easy to fall into that trap because you have track in the spring, you have prep for cross country after the summer or during the summer, then you have cross country in the fall, and then all it takes is that indoor track or even just prepping for track, and all of a sudden you're training 10, 11 months out of the year and with no time to do anything else. So that,
Swimmers, ooh, swimmers,
oh yeah,
endurance
swimmers are,
sports.
yeah. So, couple internal factors for sports specialization, and this is coming from the NATA consensus statement. And I'm interested to hear what you guys see the most with these internal factors, what you hear the most. Love of the sport. I think that's probably, it starts off if I love the sport, then I think that one quickly drops off. Desire to be better than peers, fear of falling behind, impression that it's needed if you want to play at the collegiate or professional level, and desire to please parents and coaches. I think this kind of goes in that order a little bit. Probably move up fear of falling behind over desire to be better than peers, although they're kind of switch. But I think love of sport kind of gets you into that specialization. And then the competitiveness starts, and you're like, I don't want to fall behind. You might think that you need to do it to get to the collegiate level. And then I think it always ends up with, my parents want me to do this and they're pushing, they've invested that much time and I don't want to let them down. I'm a junior or senior. So it's kind of like a trend that you go through, but interested to hear your guys' thoughts.
Yeah, my mom and dad spent a lot of money on me playing this sport, so I have to.
Yeah, I hear my parents have already paid for the season, so I have to play, even if I'm injured.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one's tough. I think the fear of falling behind is, I think it starts intrinsically and then it goes extrinsically, right? Like you love the sport, you want to be better than your peers, you're afraid of falling behind competitively. And I think they use those off-season sports, speaking of the high school season as in season, they use club to better. Like I've heard so many kids be like, well, my coach won't play me on the high school team if I don't play on the club team because I'm not going to get good enough, or they're going to come in better, which is a valid concern. Not invalidating that at all. But then when it transitions into, I'm only playing volleyball because I can't take a season off because I'll fall behind, that's when it becomes that like dangerous loop. The NATA consensus statement states that this is especially prevalent in sports that peak at a young age, I guess because you have less time to kind of ramp up. So we're talking about gymnastics, which like you're at your peak at like 15, 14, 15, 16, somewhere in that range. Baseball, basketball, figure skating, and soccer.
Okay, but you know what the age is for Olympic athletes? The average age, cross-sectional examination, average age of an Olympic athlete's initial sports participation was?
Yes, hold on. I have it.
What do you think it is, Ashley? What do you think
I
it
want
is
it, yeah.
before he finds it? What do you think it is?
I'm going to guess it's
Olympic
like
athletes.
8 years old.
11 and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
So much
it's
old.
later.
It literally, the article says, remarkably later than many parents and coaches believe. Like, they started their sport at 11 and a half. Your kids will be okay. Your kids will be
Yeah.
okay. They're going to get better at their sport. I'm ready for this conversation, you guys, about this. The amount where I'm like, stop bothering your kids before they're able to do things. Like, let their bodies develop. I'm so ready. This is why I hit the strength and conditioning articles hard, because these ones, they just, the athletic training ones make it make sense, but like the strength and conditioning ones, the way it's said make me go, yeah, we know this. Come on. This whole topic to me is like how many national organizations of medicine, like the American Medical Society, every sports medicine society has an article, has a position statement on this where they say, hey, stop making your kids specialize. And for some reason, every coach and parent on the planet is like, my kid's only playing one sport.
So
I just
why?
don't understand. Yeah.
Why? Let's dive into that for a second. This, like we just talked about peace and love, that is up and coming. This one is, every single organization you look at has very strong verbiage and very strong guidelines and very like specific, here is the criteria, here's what you shouldn't do, here's benefit. It's very well documented, very well researched. So why are we fighting so much? And it's a losing battle. This is getting worse and worse, in my opinion. Why are we going backwards on this?
Money.
Yeah, that's
I
the
mean,
one
it's
word
the
I was
only
looking to
answer.
find.
It's the only answer. It's money based. It is groups and clubs and everyone else saying, we can make your kid better at this if you spend money on it. We'll put your kid on this high traveling team. They're a great player. You just have to pay for them to travel. Like,
A collegiate tuitions
yeah.
amount. What is it, like 15 to 20 grand a year
I
per
don't
club? It's
even.
something stupid expensive. Maybe it's like 7 or 8 grand.
At least I think
But
youth hockey is 8,000 a season.
oh my goodness. So what are parents looking to get out of having their kids specialize? The kid hasn't grown yet for the most part when they do this. Sugimoto et al. Referenced that the idea that deliberate practice is an indicator of achieving elite status, and that's primarily due to that motor skill development. So specializing in youth sports is not going to help you get stronger faster. It's not going to help you grow faster, but they're looking at developing that motor skill, which there's something to be said of you're going to grow and your motor skill is going to get worse as you grow. So if you get the motor skills really, really good early,
Well, I have that.
oh,
Hold on,
nope.
hold
Oh,
on.
oh.
Yeah, I'm gonna find it because there's a spot in here where it talks about the developmental age and when they go back to being, baby deer on legs, and they can't help it, and it has nothing to do with their motor skills, but all about their developmental age.
Yeah. I mean, let's take an example for an 8-year-old who's 5 or 4'10", right? And they develop all these motor skills for their sport, let's say baseball, and then they hit 15, 16 and they grow 6 inches. And all of a sudden their limbs are a lot longer. Their step when pitching is a lot longer. Their arc for throwing is a lot longer. They're a baby deer on legs. It doesn't matter how well you trained in that motor skill. You have to relearn everything.
Right.
I think that's one of the big factors in delaying that, doesn't get talked about enough or as much is just you're going to have to relearn these things anyway. So you don't really get that motor skill development as much as you think you would.
Right. It's essentially it was like prepubescent age. And they just, because of that bone growth before the tendons can catch up, right? Is the layman's way of saying it. And that specific, yeah, the disproportionate rate between structural tissue and bone growth early is at a faster rate than both muscle and tendon, which lag behind. The muscle imbalance is a particular concern when they're fatigued, and it gives them a less favorable activation strategy for their muscles. So basically, no matter what you do, a prepubescent body is not developing the motor skills yet because once they can develop the motor skill early and then their body grows and then it's no longer a coordinated movement. They have to re-coordinate, resynchronize their body movements.
Okay, so with these clubs, we'll finish off with why families do it. I think a lot of this is they take their kid because their kid likes the sport. They realize their kid's like naturally pretty good at the sport, which at that age, if you can run and do anything somewhat coordinated, you're good at that age. It's always funny covering like the super young youth sports. Like I covered lacrosse and they were 6 and they were just a bunch of bobbleheads running around the field. And then all of a sudden one would just drop like on the other side of the field and the ball's like on the other side. I'm like, what just happened? Then they like, kick their butt up into the air, head on the ground to get back up. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So if they can just run and do anything at the same time, they're considered elite at that level. And if their kids having fun, then a lot of times they get them into a club setting. And then I think the money and I'm not going to lie, probably ego. I think there's a lot of ego there from the club sport or the coaches are, hey, we want you to year round be part of our program. And I know a big thing is we've put this many kids or like into collegiate or pro. That's like a big talking point. And even at the high school level, we put kids here, 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 and here. But I think it just emphasizes year round playing and emphasizes winning over development, especially at that young age. And I get where parents are coming from. Hey, my kid likes this. They're good at it. We're going to spend some of our hard earned money to get them into that. But then it's kind of a sunk cost fallacy of, well, we've already done it. We might as well do it again. They're really good.
And for the masses, there's also people who are like, well, LeBron started playing at 4. Look at him. Like, it that's not always the case. Like, it just,
Yes. Yeah.
like, your kid is not naturally athletic at 4.
Yes. We'll talk about that. And also, started playing is very different than specialized.
Right.
You can play whatever sport you're going to be the best at, you're going to play from a very young age.
Right.
The difference is, are you going to only play that and specialize in it? Or are you going to, not everyone's playing their best sport at a very young age. Some people, like you hear the stories of they started junior, senior year and they go to D1 college. So they're just that good. So I think, like you said, Katie, I think money is a huge driving factor in this whole thing. And I don't know how to combat that from the club side, but I think the conversations with the kids and parents can help a ton to make sure that these kids are in a safe spot. Any last thoughts on why families do it before we hop on to section 2?
I kind of think that a lot of families do it just from what I see because the parents love the sport. They were involved in the sport, and their kid being involved in the sport makes them super happy and they get to stay around it. And then, yeah, their kid showed that early, being super good at it. So then I think psychologically, the parents put a lot into like, hey, my kid's playing this sport and he's so good. Like, and then that like kind of ego just fuels bigger and bigger and bigger. And then they just keep needing a hit of that ego.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's a lot of it.
Yeah, I think they're living vicariously through their kids to an
Yeah.
extent. And I think there's also a social factor.
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. Yeah, being involved in sports is fun.
even for parents, like
Yeah.
when they go on these trips and they travel, like, oh, his 4 best friends are on this club team because that's all they ever do. They're also my 4 best adult friends, and we get to go on these travels to Florida to do a 2-week tournament or whatever, and it's a social thing. So I think what's best for the kid often gets lost in that. It's a really good point. We just had a kid that I was having a conversation with where they just didn't want to play their sport, and the parent was like, well, no, but this, and it was just clear. I was like, he just doesn't want to play this sport. He's not having fun, which is really sad to see when that happens. All right, so section 2, I think, is where Katie's going to hop off. So, risk of adolescent athletes specializing. I think we have a ton to talk about in this one. It's super researched. There's a ton out there on it, which again begs the question of, if we know this much about it, how are we losing this battle of kids specializing more and more? So, first point I want to go into is that sports specialization has been linked to an increase in injury risk. Please do not be too shocked. Pick your jaws back up off the floor. There's a lot of research articles on this, but I want to get y'all's initial thoughts. I know this is kind of a duh for us, but initial thoughts and expand on that a little bit. Katie, this is your time to shine.
I was pausing to let Ashley go if she wanted to.
It's all you, Katie. I'm ready.
Okay. I'm gonna reel it in. I'm gonna say it totally makes sense. Why do we have to keep repeating this over and over? If your body is just doing the same body mechanics over and over and over, you're gonna cause yourself to have tendon issues and bone issues because you're pulling on the same stuff of repeated injury. And we know that happens. Like there is some leeway for Wolf's Law here to say that their bodies will adjust to their sport specialization because Wolf's Law says that if the same tendon is pulling on the bony spot, it's going to continue to develop to make that movement better. You could say that. You can also say that you're going to cause injury from repetitive overuse. Like it's in the statement, the overuse injuries exist. Like I don't it upsets me.
Yeah, Bell et al. From 2018 suggested that sports specialization in young athletes may be associated with an increased risk for overuse injuries. I think that's kind of one of the main ones that we look for. Obviously, exposures, you'll have more risk, but specifically specializing, you're going to have more of those overuse because it's the same sport. It's the same motion. It's like if you sit there and scratch one area of your arm and keep scratching the same area, after a little bit, it's going to start to get irritated, and then it's going to start to break open. It's the same thing.
Okay, I will tell you, I highlighted this in the National Strength and Conditioning position statement on long-term athletic development. It does specify that activity-related injuries, when done developmentally appropriate age, can reduce the risk of injury when it's a well-rounded strength and conditioning program includes the resistive training for balance and motor skill and the appropriate amount of rest. I'm going to say that appropriate amount of rest. Recovery is important. Every article lists it, but they can reduce the injury when you balance the training. So if you look at it that way, that would make sense. The problem being, and this is I'm going to put my CSCS hat on and say this at the top of my lungs, you have to have a qualified professional doing your training program. We need to stop depending. Don't get me wrong, PE teachers are smart. A lot of them have certifications. If you do not have a qualified person doing your strength and conditioning programs, you're not doing it right. We should not be surviving on what they did in the 60s and 70s because my coach from football in high school used to have us do this. You have to have someone who knows the sports science behind what we're doing in a weight training room. Because holy cow, why I can't. I'm going to put the soapbox away. I can't. It's too long. We'll use the whole episode just on Katie's soapbox about strength and conditioning. Qualified professional who knows what they're doing in the weight room to counterbalance your sports specialization. If you're going to do that, you're going to spend 4 times the amount of money just to have the right training program in place in order to do this correctly. And you're going to have to spend it on recovery as well. There's nobody has enough money in the world except for the professional athletes to manage it this way.
Clubs have a lot of money though. There's a lot of money there. A lot of money goes to the coaches. I don't know how much goes to the staff around them, but I agree completely. Like a lot of the times you have these coaches who they might have done it at a higher level and they're coaching, but there's no thought to this is a pediatric sport. These are kids who are still developing, who are still growing. You need to make sure that you have a qualified professional there to help guide them and manage them and decrease that risk. And you'd think it would be something where they'd be like, oh, yeah. Because if you have a CSCS or qualified, some other certification person taking them through this, an athletic trainer, you're going to decrease the risk of injury and then they're going to stay on the field. They're going to heal faster. They're going to increase better. They're going to get better faster. It's almost like a 1 step back, 5 steps forward type of deal. You pay a little bit of money and you're getting a ton more performance, which is going to bring in more money. I'm not sure why that hasn't it hasn't become a thing. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I find it incredibly frustrating, especially at the high school level, that you know you have a weight class almost every hour of the school day because you have a weight room that you spent an exorbitant amount of money to have this weight room in, because we know that training your body leads to better sports performance. It makes sense. I'm going to get on that soapbox in a little bit. I'm certain of it. It's coming. But you don't have a qualified strength and conditioning specialist in your weight room to tell them how to do it appropriately, to program for them. It's not just walking in and doing squats. Like they're
Let
they're
it go. Just have at it.
in the strength and conditioning books, like when I did my training, I will never remember reading. I think I put it in every paper I wrote just because it hits home so well. There is a logical progression of how you are supposed to strength train, and why we don't follow it. Like, I am unsure that I have ever seen a high school program follow the logical progression of strength and conditioning in my entire career. And it's so frustrating to me. Like, why are we doing this? And I can tell you exactly where the injuries occur and which phase they're in and which phase they skipped in order to get here. And so it drives me crazy that we talk about this all the time. And it goes back to that specialization basketball coach who was like, no, they have to participate in basketball weights today. But why? Why do they have to? Because I'm going to go back to these statements that continuously occur over and over again, where all that they're doing between the age of 7 and 14, and I understand that high school we're talking about 14 to 18, but you say all you want, I'm still going to stand on this hill. All they're doing is coordinating their muscle movements. That is the exact thing they're doing. They're getting muscle synchronicity and coordinated movements out of this. And you can do that with body weight training up until a certain point. And when you have athletes that are doing 3 sports at a time, all you need to do is continue to improve that coordination. Yep. Heard it as I said it. But you do not have to do these fancy programs. All you have to do is get them to learn how to move their body correctly, and they will continue to improve. You will see huge leaps and bounds in their progression, even with just body weight activity, because their bodies are learning to move again, which was the point of my earlier statement on reading what it says about they have significant alterations in their body biomechanics at this age. All we have to do is reteach them how to move it correctly. That's all you have to do. And they'll continue to get better. And then when they hit the college age where they actually have strength and conditioning professionals who that is their full-time everyday job to teach them how to do it, they're going to get exponentially better. Maybe at 16 we can start doing that in high school, but I've seen a lot of 16-year-olds whose bodies don't move correctly yet. And it's because they're not developmentally there yet. Their bodies aren't there. Let them get better.
One of my biggest pet peeves is when you see sports, and it doesn't matter when in their season. I've seen it the entire time, off season, in season. They're like, "Oh, this kid just did this. He just hit this on the squat rack." I'm like, "Isn't that a new PR? Didn't he just PR 3 weeks ago?" And like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Aren't you guys like mid-season?" And then I'm like, also, why is he going for PRs within a 3-week span? Are you not
Right.
periodizing?
Yeah.
Like, are you not going up and down? Like, you're not giving any time to like condense the muscle and tone it. You're just putting more muscle mass, more muscle mass, more muscle mass, and then all of a sudden you like, and then you wonder why he looks like super awkward running because he's put on so much muscle in his quads. He has no idea what to do with it. It's a huge, and then you see all these overuse injuries, and it drives me nuts that we don't pay more attention to. Arguably, our most at-risk population is these kids when they're growing. Their growth plates are open. They're awkward. They're more susceptible to farting, doing a front squat, dropping it, and breaking their wrists.
For real though. For real
Like,
though.
we need to have professionals there to help guide them through that. And then that sets them up for a lifetime of knowing how to do this instead of getting to college and being like, oh, this is what an actual weight program looks like, instead of just a PE teacher who's honestly just looking at YouTube videos most likely instead of the certification and going, okay, we're going to do these Olympic style lifts. I don't really have a certification, so I'm not sure how to like teach it, how to periodize it, how to do weights, reps, any of that stuff. We're just going to kind of go on, the 3 sets of 8 and then go up in weight, 3 sets of 8. And then, this is
Okay.
there's so much room to improve here. And it's so frustrating.
So this, when I was reading, I swear every time I read a position statement, I like go back and I'm like, gosh, it makes so much sense. I just wish people would read the position statements on like an annual or biannual basis just so it made sense. So this was the thing that stuck out this time that I read this. Blunting. Blunting is the potential for an individual's motor skill portfolio to reduce their standard of performance later in life because of an increased risk of overtraining and they're dropping out from their sport.
Hmm.
So then let me scroll
Is
down
that
to where it
from
talks about
NS,
blunting.
NCS, NSCA?
Yeah, and the National
Okay.
Strength and Conditioning Association. So where it talks about, so I think I forgot that there was the term called blunting, which is basically stunting their growth, right? Blunting is you're basically setting them up for failure. They're going to burn out of their activity. And so what happens, they get overtrained because of this, and it's because they're not a balanced player, because all they really need is to focus on their like the gross motor movements. They don't need to focus on these minimal like sport specific training movements yet. All they need to do is develop overall athleticism, which is done by big generalized movements. So teach them how to squat, but don't worry about them maxing their front squat yet. They're they're gonna get there, but they don't need to be maxing yet.
Yeah, it's a really good point. So I want to throw out a couple articles in here and just get a little bit in the weeds, and we'll kind of go through these quick. If you guys have anything to add on them, just let me know. So the first one's from McGinn et al. From 2017, demonstrated that specialized athletes had an increased risk of lower extremity injuries compared with multi-sport athletes, even when controlling for competition volume. So my brain automatically goes to soccer because that's where I see the most lower extremity injuries, and specialization is just soccer, soccer, soccer. Hall et al., which Katie and I had talked about off air a little bit, that this one was pretty frequently referenced, from 2015 showed that female athletes participating in basketball, soccer, or volleyball, specialization in a single sport was associated with a 1.5-fold increase in relative risk of patellofemoral pain incidents, which is a massive thing that I see in my ATF, or the ATFs I work in. I see patellofemoral pain all the time, and it's mostly in the female population, and it's almost always in basketball, soccer, or volleyball. Soccer and volleyball are the two that I see specialize the most. So that completely lines up with what I'm seeing in everyday practice.
So to add into that, fourfold increase in Osgood-Schlatters disease. Fourfold, four times
Woo.
likely to develop Osgood-Schlatters when you're a single sport specialized athlete versus multi-sport. That's also in that same paper.
Do they throw an age on that? Well, I'm guessing when it's in their growth spurt, when their
It just
growth
says,
plates are wide
yeah,
open.
early age female
Okay.
youth athlete, but four times. It's important. It's four times.
So I'll skip down to the one last in the list because that's directly relevant to this.
Mhm.
So Sugimoto et al. From 2024 suggested that musculoskeletal injuries often happen during the growth spurt, and that healthcare practitioners who work with young athletes need to monitor onset and rate of growth. I want to repeat that again. Need to monitor onset and rate of growth and consider this a risk factor for musculoskeletal injury. that's probably playing into that 4 times risk for Oscar slaughter. Are we paying attention at all to when these kids become bean poles? Are we paying any attention at all to the growth plates? My brain just goes to how much are we over training these kids and leading to injury because we're not paying attention to when they're growing. We're just, they're kids, they're going to grow. Well, should we adjust what they're doing during that phase? That suggests yes, we should, to decrease musculoskeletal injuries that happen during the growth spurt.
Do you ask that in your history? When you do your subjective? I ask it all the time now. I don't know when I started, but
I'm
how
going
much
to.
how much have
Yeah.
you grown in the last year? And I have had a sophomore say 4 inches, and I go, "Uh-huh, my knees hurt too." I don't even know how I don't know how else to tell you this. My knees hurt too. Like, 4 inches, but I mean, you see it. It happens, right? But, like, in the last 6 months, how much have you grown in the last year? And I also ask, "How much weight have you put on?" Because they're in
Mm.
the weight room, and now they're 4 inches taller, and they've put on 40 pounds. Wait, how? Like, what? Like, what? Like, how are you even keeping up? Like, my body, you hurt. Here's here's my broken. You hurt. I I
Yeah.
hurt for you.
Yeah. Your body's just not
Can
that.
you
Sometimes that is the second
could
question that I
you
ask,
go home
though.
and sleep for a week? I think you need to sleep for a week.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have you had a kid come in and be like, my knees hurt? Okay, it's the early season. What have you been doing? This. And then your next question is, how much have you grown? Or maybe it's what year are you? Oh, I'm a
Right.
freshman. How much have you grown in the past like 6 months? And then all of a sudden you're like, boop, okay, cool. Eval's done. You know
Right.
exactly what's going on here. So I guess, yeah, I kind of do. Ashley, do you ask that a lot?
I don't ask that a ton, but I just kind of assume that they're growing a lot, and I just kind of factor that into what I tell them and how I treat them. So,
Mm. So Shepard et al. To finish out these last two from 2020 showed that highly specialized ice hockey athletes reported more pain, lower quality of life, and lower functional scores during activities of daily living and sport recreation. And this study specifically looked at hip and groin pain. I think that's a big piece, the quality of life. We don't talk about that enough. And then Carter et al. From 2020 showed that sports sampling was associated with a decreased risk of injury when compared to sports specialization. So that kind of leads us into the hey, you can decrease your risk of injury if you sports sample and play different sports and don't just play one sport where you're doing the same motion over and over and over and over and over and over again, especially as you're growing and during that onset and rate of growth period where it's at its highest. Last one I want to throw out here is one that I don't think we talk about enough, but I want to have that conversation, and it's regarding mental health considerations. So, Post et al. From 2017 talked about athletes who specialized and whose weekly hours of participation exceeded their age and years were more likely to report recent overuse injuries compared to their peers. We know mental health plays a factor in overuse, regarding energy levels, regarding want to be there, regarding paying attention to what they're doing, effort level. If you're kind of going half speed, you're more at risk to have those overuse injuries because you're not going as explosively as you normally would, and it puts stress on different structures. So I think that's something we also need to look at is how are these kids doing mentally? Are they getting burned out? I mean, I just had a kid yesterday who was coming in talking about their club soccer team and how I think they had like shin splints or something. I don't know what it was, but they had no rest. And you could just tell this poor kid was just down. Like they hurt all the time. And we were like, well, you need some time off. He's like, yeah, but I can't. My mom, like my parents paid for this. It's club, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, this kid is not just injured and playing. They're not enjoying life right now. They're just kind of moping around the school. Their mental health's taking a hit. I think that's an important piece that we need to chat about.
When you aren't in your schools over the summer, correct?
not
Correct.
as much as
So
you, yeah.
so during the summer when I'm in the athletic training room and I'm seeing kids who are hurting during the summer, I that's like my first question. When was the last time you took 2 weeks off? When was the last time you took and they're like, I can't. I don't I've basketball, baseball, and soccer that I don't whatever every week. And I'm like, "Y- yeah, your body hurts, man. Like you're how exhausted are you? It's summer. You're supposed to be happy and whatever, and they're more stressed without schoolwork. And I'm like, we are causing suffering. We're not causing
That's a big red
happiness.
flag.
We are causing suffering. It is summertime and we are stressed. Why are we so stressed?
One of the bigger problems I'm seeing is those athletes they're playing multiple sports at a time.
Right.
So like they specialize in, we'll just say soccer. So they're playing soccer year round, but then they are also playing other sports. And so they leave, they go high school, right after high school, they're doing their high school practice, right after their high school practice, or they're often leaving early from that to go to their club practice in a different sport, or sometimes the same sport, depending on the season. And it blows my mind, and I'm like, "When are you resting? When are you stopping? Like, you need rest." "Well, I can take, like, a day." "Well, your body needs more than a day. I am so sorry." Like, we are not magic.
And
But,
then they get frustrated that they're not getting better. And it's
yeah.
like your body doesn't work that fast. You need more time. All right. So how do we frame this discussion to the families to kind of get through? I know we've talked about in depth why it's not good. How do we convey that to these parents where there's already these preconceived notions that long-term success comes from sports specialization? How do we break that thought process?
I always start with the amount of organizations that have it listed, right? Like, I'm like, listen, I know, I hear you, but your kid, 8 months of the year is plenty before the age of 18. Like, they can't train for all 12 months. They can't. And I go back to that logistical strength training. That's the piece of this that matters most, right? When you do a endurance, hypertrophy, strength, and power training cycle, which should be an annual cycle for the age group we're talking about, and they should be in that endurance phase during the off season when they have time to just let their bodies do the motor skill patterns. Then they have to progress. But you know what there is? There's also an 8-week period in every annual training plan where it's just off and they can cross train. It's active restoration is all it is. And their body's moving. They can take up trail riding, I don't know, something non-sport related at all, right? Like, oh, I'm just going to go for a bike ride today because I'm a kid who wants to go for a bike ride. Or just, oh, I can't remember the word for it. It's just active play. Like, it's just active,
Mm-hmm.
non organized play. And sure, they might go play soccer with their friends, but it's a totally different game when it's just a recreational pickup game in the park of soccer than it is organized and controlled, and you have to do this same drill over and over. And it's just a very different phase where for 8 weeks of that cycle, you know what the professional athletes do? They travel during that time. And I know I can't, well, maybe, sorry parents, maybe we take our kids for an experience for a week and they aren't required to run on that. They aren't required to go to the hotel's gym, but they can play in the pool because you know kids like to play in the pool. Like, let's have them do something else during their summer. And I know their coaches want them playing because that's how programs make money. They have summer camp that is all summer long, 3 days a week, and they're required to be there and they're strength training and they're doing X, Y, and Z. But it should be built into their annual planning every year. Olympians do it. Professional athletes do it. They take the time off. Your kid can take the time off.
Yeah, and 2 points to that. The NATA official statement words it as rest and recovery time from organized sport
Right.
participation, which is what you're getting at. I think the biggest point of what you said is, the biggest pushback that you'll get from that is, well, I don't want my child to fall behind. Like success does not, or specialization does not equal success. And there's a lot of good research out there and a lot of good information you can use to back that. And one of the things that I always come back to is from Gulich et al. In 2015. And that study found that world-class athletes, the top of the top, began focusing on a single sport later than national level athletes. Specializing young does not mean you are going to have long-term success. In fact, it actually might delay or inhibit your ability to reach that higher stage. That same study also found that world-class athletes, so those who ranked in the top 10 in Olympic competition or world championships, performed more additional sports than did national class athletes, those who ranked in the top 10 nationally, but did not reach international competition. So again, just going to show if you play more sports And if you start later in a specialization, you're more likely actually to become a world-class athlete and reach your potential. That says a lot about the blunting effect of, are we going to burn these kids out too much? Are we going to inhibit their ability to get where they need to be? Are we going to inhibit their ability to learn other movements that aren't just soccer movements? Or, with football, let's say they specialize there. If they wrestle, or if they didn't wrestle, are they going to lose that chance to learn how to leverage better, which can then directly go into being an offensive or defensive lineman or stuff like that? So
And mental health wise, like $6,000 for, I don't know, off season training go a long way towards an experience where someone says, well, how did that make you better? Well, it makes you a more rounded person. Like, take your kids, go do an experience, let their body rest at the same time. Man, their mental health will improve. What? Like, they will be happier.
yeah, train smarter, not harder.
Right.
Don't just think you need to throw everything at them and they'll
Right.
get better. Like, you have to. I think there's another speaker at the CITA summit that said, your body heals and gets better when you're resting. When you're working out is when you're damaging it, allowing it to like improve according to the stresses that it's put under. Wolf's Law.
Right.
So you have to let them rest in order to recover to be better.
Well, and you can see a lot of this with data. So we're not going to get into wearable technology today. That is far beyond the scope of this podcast right now. But if you have an Apple Watch, if you have a Garmin, if you have, I don't know, every other device on the planet that is now like advertised for everyone to wear, they give you your recovery overnight. They tell you what your sleep score is. They tell you, things like that. And it's like, oh, if you were to, I'm sure you can, if you were to check your high school child's recovery score on a nightly basis, it's going to be horrible. Like, and it basically says their body's not primed to be performing today. So hopefully, I'm hopeful we will see a move towards that in the future where it's like, hey, we should give our kids an off day of practice today, or we should let their body, like, if their resting heart rate never drops down overnight and they're not getting to that deep sleep level of recovery, maybe we'll see a shift where people finally go, oh, it's probably important that they rest more today. We're going to get there. It's going to be a fascinating future topic.
And if they rest, oh, well, hey, their grades might start going up. They might be less stressed in school. It's a cascading issue. You overtrain, you become more tired, you're not recovering, you're more tired in school, you have less time to do homework, your grades go down, you get more stressed, then you have to go train, you get even more stressed, and you're not recovering. It's just it's a cycle that we've got to help our kids break out of, to make sure that their overall quality of life is not decreasing because they're so hyper focused on this specialization. That is their life. That's their friend group. That's what they're best at. That's their identity at this age. And that's not healthy for these young kids to have an identity tied to a sport. Their identities should be tied to who they are and figuring out who they are as a person, not I'm a forward striker for this club team. That should not be your identity at the age of 13. And it always kind of breaks my heart a little bit when kids say that. And I think that's a key part where we as athletic trainers in the high school can kind of step in and be like, hey, so tell me a little bit about yourself. And if the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, I play this club, I'm like, no. Let's reframe that. I was actually just shadowing a doc and she just straight up interrupted a kid when she was like, the kid said, well, I don't want to inconvenience somebody. She's like, nope, we are stopping that train of thought right now. You advocate for yourself. You deserve that. And I kind of stuck with me of, no, I don't want to hear about you as an athlete. Tell me about you as a person outside of athletics. Let's switch this priority a little bit and realize you are living a life right now and you're developing is not all about your sport.
Yeah, that's maybe a future podcast topic of athletic identity.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah, that's a
great.
good
I
point.
love that a doc did that.
Oh, it was great. I mean, it was concussion related. So, it was about academic adjustments, and I totally understood where the kid came from. And she was like an overachiever, seemed like a really, really good kid. She's like, well, I don't want to inconvenience them. And she was just like, nope, we're stopping right there. You asked for help, there's a good life. Like, we're not just recovering from this, we're learning life lessons. And I think that's another piece that can be taken to the sports specialization. This is not just about sports. We're learning life lessons of how to manage load, how to manage things that we enjoy doing, but also having a life. And I think all of us kind of struggle with that between hobbies, career, and personal life. If you guys need a definition of what personal life is, because I know some athletic trainers are not good at having that, we can, we can expand on that a little bit. But I think that's an important discussion to have with these kids, because they're just like so sport focused in this mode. Trying to break them out of that, I think, helps a ton. So a few more things that I wanted to throw out there to kind of give you guys some more backing or data on this discussion that you can throw out to families when you're having this discussion. Because a lot of times you're going to have these parents who are living vicariously, or they think this is the right way to do it. They heard LeBron started playing at 4 years old. This is not going to be parents who are like, oh yeah, my kid just wanted to do it, so I thought, oh yeah, we'll just do it and he's just having fun. These are a lot of times it's, we are doing this as our lifestyle. This is our identity of our whole family. So from I'm going to butcher this name, Rosenving et al. From 2018. I got it close enough, right? You
Yeah,
can find
it
it.
sounded great. Yeah.
Thank you. Multi-sport high school athletes had longer professional careers than those who specialized in a single sport during high school. That is probably my favorite stat to be able to throw out and say, hey, so multi-sport athletes are more likely to have a longer professional career if they do make it. And they're actually more likely to make it. But if they do, they're likely to have a longer career. So let's not specialize and let's encourage a longer professional career if they make it to that point.
Well, I think now is a good time. Well, any time is a good time, but to throw this in about the 10,000 hour rule, like, because that's the one that the parents seem to have. And I'm not like, it's weird to me that this is one that comes back, but because it was a violinist, I think it was music performance of the
I think so.
10,000 hour rule came into play here, and that does not transition to sport. Like that 10,000 hours does not make you an expert at your sport. It's not the same. It's that doesn't cross. So it's important for parents to know, like, no, your child does not need all of these hours of training in order to get better at this. Their bodies will develop and get better, but that particular one, I'm still shocked that we see it, because every article says, do not use this, do not use the 10,000 hour rule, but people think it. And so it's crazy. 10,000 hours would be crazy. It's 3 hours a day for 10 years. Years.
This is not a video game where you just achieve a
Right.
certain amount and you are all of a sudden, boop, expert level. Like, it's not how this works.
Before we got too far into this, thought we should throw out, like, if a parent says something about the 10,000 hour rule, like, to say it's disproven is like the lowest level of statement you could make on it. Like, 10,000 hours is going to cause overuse injuries. It just is.
And I mean, if you track a normal level of playing, that 10,000 hour is going to happen at the collegiate or professional level, which is, you can't rush it and have it happen at 16 years old.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the basis is it's not, it's been disproven. So I don't want to give it too much credence.
Quality over quantity, folks. Quality over quantity.
Yes. Okay, so next research article that I have was from Allahabadi et al. In 2023.
Killed it.
And thank you. It's that male professional quarterbacks in American football who took part in multiple sports in high school demonstrated better in-season performance and career success. So going back to the last one, you want them to be better in their professional career and last longer? Have them play multiple sports and don't specialize. McClellan et al. In 2022, young athletes who performed multiple sports demonstrated better athletic performance. So for parents, this was specifically young athletes, not professional, which is, I think, super helpful alongside the Rosenving. This one discusses young athletes and their performance. If you want your athlete to be better performing than their peers, play multiple sports and they will have a high likelihood of being better at that sport, having better athletic performance. That's like a direct relation of this is not, specialization does not mean you're going to get better. And then I don't know if you guys know off the top of your head, I know that the talk for CATA talked about inherent factors of becoming professional. And one of the biggest factors to becoming professional was having somebody in your family who was professional. Genetics play a huge role in this. I'm sorry, you can train all you want. If you're 4'11", you're not playing volleyball at a collegiate level on the front row.
Probably ever.
or
Yeah.
even libero.
There's a reason that
Yeah.
names stand out in particular sports realms. I don't the Mannings, right? Like, hello. There's a reason that you hear that and you go, "Oh, that person's son also played the same sport as them? LeBron, Bronny?" Like
Huh.
genetically they are manufactured to do this. And yeah, they've probably been given an enormous amount of help throughout their growth, right? But
Hmm.
but they also have the people around them to help them, but their bloodline helps them a lot
Yeah.
too.
They started with a winning hand
Right.
and they
Yes.
only got better.
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to run through the official statement recommendations from the NATA just to give a couple more talking points when you're having these discussions. Then I want to circle back around and go over some commonly heard things that parents say, such as that 10,000 hour rule, and kind of chat about them a little bit more so that everyone has a bit better opportunity to counter those common arguments. So NATA official statement recommendation, they recommend delaying specialization as long as possible, play one team at a time, do less than 8 months per year for a single sport, have no more hours per week than age in years. I think that's a really easy one for families to latch onto as a common guideline. And then have 2 days of rest per week, which I don't think we get at the high
No.
school level. We go Monday through
Yes.
Saturday. So even outside of club sports, we have issues with that, which I think that's a really good education point for the coaches of, hey, I can't tell you how many times I've had coaches be like, oh my gosh, all my girls' shins, knees, and like hips are just falling apart. And then they're like, yeah, we have practice tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. on Saturday. I'm like, well, maybe you should. And they're like, well, I want them to come in, do some light work, and then do recovery. I'm like, well, how about you just give them full recovery instead of just a partial recovery? Like,
Yeah.
let them just
Do mental,
go.
do film only. Yeah.
Overtraining and detraining, like those take weeks to set in, not days, weeks. Your body
Mhm.
will stay relatively conditioned for 8 weeks. We don't have to worry about a day. A day off is not going to have any detriment to a body.
One step backwards, two steps forwards. And I think that something we really need to hammer with our coaches regarding to how they, I mean, we're the experts on this, especially if you have a CSCS certification, you're doubly an expert on this. We should start coaching up our coaches on, hey, this is super, super important. And that's also going to decrease our load in the ATF. If we're seeing a lot less overuse injuries, like, hey, how do we manage this? I know at a previous school I worked at, our track team always had a lot of shin splints, posterior tib, like, or MTSS, less than the anterior tib irritation. And they switched up like their training regimen, and I saw zero. I maybe saw one, but it was preseason. And it went from like 12, 13 kids coming in with pretty bad, like pretty advanced ones early in the season to almost having none. And it's just because they started changing how much load they were putting on early, and it set them up for success later in the season. So I think there's a lot of room to grow, talking to our coaches about that and trying to get them on board with all this information of, here, it will help you. I promise you're not losing any time. This will help your athletes perform better. What are some common things that you guys hear from parents or athletes when you guys are talking about sports specialization? What are some common pushbacks you hear?
The opportunities to be seen by a college recruiter.
Yes, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I hear that all the time. And it's club is mostly where
Yep.
those recruiters come, especially in Colorado. I've noticed a lot of people are like, yeah, high school is more for just fun and school spirit. Club is where I get recruited. I don't know how to, I don't know how to address that. I'm like, okay, well, are you having fun? You're spending the entire season hurt. How do you counter that?
Depends on how injured they are, because we are largely usually dealing with the injured athlete, right? But if they're super injured and they've been in my office regularly throughout a season and they're just but a college recruiter's looking at me, I try to take it as but hey, like if you're dealing with all of this right now, next year when you're in college, how do you see your body handling this? Like, are you giving it enough rest? Are you even going to be uninjured enough to actually play on that team? And these are things you really have to consider, because you have to take the rest now. You have to, maybe you have to do the surgery now so that you could potentially play, or whatever it is. And so I'm always trying to nail it in their heads, like, think ahead. Like, if we keep coming in my office every week because you have some new overuse type injury, you're burning out your body and you're not even going to be able to play in college. So let's
Well,
back
and
this off now. Yeah. Go ahead, Katie.
that's the track to stay on, right? An injured athlete continues to stay injured. Like there's research out there. Some of these position statements list it, and I don't have the time to go find their names and the articles that they're from. But the ACL is a scary injury. Why? Because your likelihood of re-tearing your ACL if you tear it at a young age is really high. So we got to talk about that, parents. Like your kid is continuously having problems. Their body is breaking down and you're going to cause long-term deficits in how their body performs if you don't get ahead of it. If you do not allow them to get to the correct motor skills, you are training incorrect motor skills. You will train them into muscle imbalance. You will train them into causing their body to break down and have more injuries. And college coaches know that. Why? Because they've taken the time to sit down and read the research and know when they're looking at a recruit. I can't promise you this, but I can maybe think I can promise you this, that if a college recruiter comes to talk to you and you're like, "Well, I play on these 3 different teams all at the same time." 1, commitment issues. Which team, like, if you had to pick one, which team are you committed to the most, right? Like, it the mental loops that you could go into with this are so high. But that coach is also going, "Wait, okay, well, now I'm looking at recruiting you. I'm gonna pay you X amount of gross money in a year to come play this sport for us. But your risk of injury is 3 times higher right now because you're playing in 3 different things. You're already injured and you have X, Y, and Z going on, right? Like there's there's consequences to every action. Can you imagine, just for food for thought, a kid who tears their ACL who is committed to playing 3 different teams all at the same time, the stress they are under the next day when they have to call all 3 coaches and say, "Coach, I can't play this season because I tore my ACL." Like we're going to cause our kids more damage from damaging their bodies than we are by just encouraging them to play.
And this is something that's such a good point, Katie. This is something that college coaches and strength conditioning coaches, like, they work together when recruiting. These coaches don't just go out there and be like, "Oh, you look good." They chat with their strength conditioning coaches and they see when they talk to these kids, "Oh, you are playing 3 sports year round, you're doing all these things that kids and parents think is a plus." Coaches see as a, okay, so we've got some issues where this person is at a increased risk for injury, even in the collegiate level if they've specialized this young, because it's widely available. So what parents might think is a plus, hey, my kid's dedicated to this sport, collegiate coaches and staffs will see as, okay, so they're an increased risk of injury. Do we want to pay them this much money? Do we want to recruit them if they're more likely to get injured from overuse stuff or have these like patellofemoral pain syndrome or early season stuff? They see that in a different light than I think parents see it as. And I think that's an important conversation to have because coaches know what they're doing. They've taken the time to read the research, like you said. They're not going blind because there's a lot of money tied into this.
Mm-hmm.
They're making the most educated decision they can. So understand what they're looking at. They're looking at what's going to make you the most effective. And that's not necessarily special. Not necessarily. That is not specializing. That's not going to put you in the best position for success. And coaches know that.
Yeah. I just hate it when these poor athletes get to the point where they hate having to go to practice. But then they're like, "But I'm getting recruited by this college." And I was like, if you hate going to practice now, do you think you're going to like going to practice next year when, hey, it's college? You're working harder. You're getting more intense. You're doing more weight room. You're doing so much more. Are you still going to be excited about that? Maybe we need to have another talk about this. Maybe we need to take a little break. Like,
How many times, I'm sure you guys have experienced this, I cannot tell you how many times I've had kids get recruited, go to the D1, D2 school that they wanted to go to, that the coaches are pushing for, and they
oh,
drop out within a year or in the middle of that first season.
99.9% of mine.
And we can
Yep.
always tell who it's going to be. The ones who are like, "Oh, I'm almost at the finish line. I'm getting recruited." It's not going to magically get better when you get to college. If you're already burnt out at your junior, senior year of high school, it's not going to get better. You got to go somewhere that you like. You got to enjoy the sport. I think I saw somewhere in the one of the articles, but I forgot to pull it out. Enjoying your sport leads to longer success in that sport
Hmm.
because you're having fun. Like a lot of these kids go collegiate and they think they reach to the zenith of what they can do and they're going to have a great time there. No, they're just even more miserable because now they have college courses on top of it, a college training schedule with weightlifting, with all that stuff, and they're miserable and they
Yep.
drop out within a year. And it just stinks to see because then they come back and they come to the community college, which, hey, go to community college first. Those first 2 years are super cheap. You learn
Yeah.
the same stuff. I'm a huge proponent of that. So
Yep.
not necessarily a bad thing, but their whole plan has been blown up. And the sad thing is we all can see it coming from a mile away and it happens over and over and over again.
Yes. And then I often see, so when I'm talking to athletes like that, I also try to mention, like, hey, lifelong, what do you want to do activity wise in your life? Because so many adults play club sports and stuff. What it's the socialization factor, it's, they still enjoy the sport. I was like, so you want to be able to do that when you're older. And so you need to refine that love of the sport, but also look ahead, like, this isn't the last time you're ever going to play soccer. This might be the last time you ever play high school soccer. Good job. You've graduated. And it's only going to get bigger and better from there. So don't worry about that. But, think about the lifelong life term and doing these for the rest of your life. And especially with these injuries, if you are destroying your body right now, you're never going to be able to play sports as an adult because you're going to be so injured all the time and you're always going to be in pain. So I try to put that in their heads as well.
It's always nice when you can lean on the parents who are like, hey, I love when parents come in, they're like, hey, you need to treat this correctly because I played collegiate soccer and I didn't treat this correctly and I'm in pain squatting and playing like soccer with you. Don't make the same mistakes. So sometimes you can lean on those parents, but I think another point is we are the experience that the kids don't have. We know how these things are going to go. The kids don't. So I think it's important that we convey that to them and be like, hey, I've seen this so many times. I can tell you how this is going to happen. Katie, I can just hear your voice in my head saying that. I've seen this. I can tell you how this is going to happen. I've lived this through 20, 30, 40 kids in the last 6 years. Be that experience. We do that with injuries. We say, hey, yeah, you have a blister that it's a nothing, but I've seen a blister land a kid in the hospital for 5 days. So please cover this and let it heal up for the next 2 days and then you'll be fine. Don't just ignore it and be disgusting and don't wash it.
Gross.
We've seen how these things can go. So
Gross.
yeah, I've had that happen. Yes, that was a true story. I had a blood infection within like, they got to me and there was already the red
Oh,
lines coming out of the blister. I'm like, oh no. And then within like an hour, he was going downhill feeling sick. I'm like, we're going to the ER. But I think we need to be that guide because especially for those parents who haven't played collegiately or professionally, they don't know. It's up to us to help guide them through that. They're hearing what the club coaches are telling them. They're hearing what other parents, maybe parents who've had successful kids, but having a successful kid does not make you an expert on this topic. So it's up to us to kind of guide them and educate and be like, here's how this usually goes. Here's some important factors to consider. And here's how you can increase your chances of being successful at that next level. It's not always an easy discussion to have.
I found that parents also handle their future life conversation better.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like hey, I am worried about how, little Johnny is going to be for the rest of his life. He's going to be in so much pain because of all these injuries. We're not handling them correctly now. Like we only get one body. You get one shot. And once you ruin it, your life's kind of not as fun. And, a lot of these parents also have those aches and pains from their high school sports injuries. And they go,
Mm-hmm.
oh, yeah, that's a good point. So I found that sometimes that the future talk helps the most.
I like that. It forces the parent to take that 12, 13-year-old Johnny out of this is my 12, 13-year-old kid into they're going to be an adult one day. And it brings in that consideration, which I think is super important. Any other things that we typically hear? This is all really good advice. Hopefully anybody chatting with parents about this will feel well prepared.
I think when you're chatting with parents, the best way to come up, like to approach those confrontations, because some of those parents they're very passionate and they are very heated about, this topic, is to ask a lot of questions that, I mean, you know the answer to, but ask them and make it sound like it's the parents coming up with these answers, and then be like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm.
So we should probably do this then. And, like kind of bring it about that way is, I found that that's the questioning conversation tends to go better than, hey, Johnny can't play this many sports. Like, he's burnt out. He's injured. He's so over it. He's mentally exhausted. He hates practices. He hates you guys. He hates his coaches. He hates everything about his life right now. Like, we're stopping this right now. So you can't tell them what to do. You gotta like ask them the guiding questions and try to let them come to it.
I like that. I feel like anytime we tell people to do stuff, they just inherently push back
Yep.
for whatever reason. So I like that a lot. Like, guide them with those questions that you already know the answer to, but you're kind of helping them come to the conclusion, because when it's their idea, they're going to be much more agreeable to doing it versus you just telling.
Yeah. And when I'm trying to like suggest something like, oh, I wonder if just taking a week or two off right now will really help them later.
Yeah. Or the classic, like, hey, how'd you feel like on Monday after the weekend? Oh, I felt better. Well, how you feeling today on Thursday or Friday? I feel a lot worse. Like, I wonder, do you think those days helped you? Yeah, I think so. Oh, could we find some more days to, and all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, whoa. You'd think it would tie in like, oh, I had 2 days off, I feel better. But sometimes that doesn't click. You got to help them there.
Yep.
Same with water. Oh, I drink more water, I feel better.
What?
You think they'd make
That's
that correlation.
crazy.
I know, but sometimes you got to hold their hand to get there. You didn't stay up until 2 a.m. playing video games? And
I know, right? We were doom scrolling all night and we didn't drink anything and we skipped lunch. I wonder why we feel bad.
Yeah, so help guide them there. Cool. Any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
Yeah, nothing from us.
All right, I can't see Katie, but I'm going to assume that was a no. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving your feedback and everything. I feel like this is a really fun conversation. This is definitely not the end of it. This is something that's becoming more and more prevalent. So we're going to keep on tackling this. And if you guys out there have any recommendations for us that has worked for you that you haven't heard on the pod, please let us know. We love hearing the feedback. We want to improve too. We don't know everything. Some of us put 10,000 hours in, but we still are learning. So please feel free to drop some feedback. If you enjoyed the conversation, hit subscribe, share the show. All that stuff helps us get out to more people so that we can help more people and continue building this community of athletic trainers in Colorado. And it helps us make every episode better. So it's what we're always striving for. We've got new episodes every other Friday, so be sure to check back soon. Until then, thank you so much for listening and have a good one.